Shri Amitabh Kanji and Shri Shingla ji to please join us here on the stage to begin this town hall session. जोरदार तालियों से स्वागत. Respected Shri Amitabh Kanji, G20 Sherpa, we extend a very warm and hearty welcome to you. Respected Shri Harshvardhan Shringla, Chief Coordinator G20 Secretariat, I would like to invite you as well, sir. एक बार जोरदार तालियों से हमारे मेहमानों का स्वागत करें. I would like to invite Ambassador Shri Muktesh K. Pardeshi, OSD G20 Operations, and Ambassador Shri Abhay Thakur, Additional Secretary G20, to whom we extend a very warm welcome. बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आज के इस कार्यक्रम में, टाउन हॉल सेशन में. मिस्टर अमिताभ कांत doesn't need any introduction, पर मैं ज़रूर छोटा सा उनके बारे में बताना अपनी जिम्मेदारी समझती हूँ. The G20 team is led by respected Shri Amitabh Kanji, India's G20 Sherpa. Respected Shri Amitabh Kanji is a government reformer and a policy change agent for India. आप कई flagship national initiatives के key driver भी रहे हैं. Startup India, Make in India, Incredible India, Kerala, God's Own Country, and the aspirational districts, etc. So may I now invite respected Shri Amitabh Kanji to kindly speak on the occasion.
Can I have the presentation quickly, please?
This may not be the one that you...
Who's managing the screen?
This is not your presentation.
Hi.
Is this
Can we have the presentation, please?
it's up, but it's not up there. This is the one. Very odd, thanks.
Whoever is managing the screen, can we have the presentation, please? G20 is being held in India for the first time. This will be under India's presidency, and the Prime Minister will be the leader of the G20. It's a meeting of all the G20 leaders. Now, G20 is important because G20 comprises of about 85% of the global GDP. It accounts for about 78% of the global trade. It accounts for about 90% of the patents. And it also accounts for almost 2/3 of the global population. And therefore, G20 is the most important global grouping in the world. It is important because the United Nations is to large body of 186 nations, it's very difficult to arrive at a consensus. Okay. It's G7 is a body of some rich nations, and therefore the only forum which is able to put the developed and the developing countries together is the G20. Therefore, as you see on the screen, it is more powerful than United Nations and G7, and it's a very major body. It's a very powerful forum for bringing the developed and the developing world together. Now, G20 in the past have had major success stories. Every time there's been a crisis of growth, there's been a challenge of recession, if there's been a challenge of the East Asian crisis or the Russian ruble or the Mexican peso crisis, the G20 has acted, and therefore G20 has had very major impact earlier. Now, this time when we hold the G20 in India, it will be the largest ever gathering, because in addition to the G20 countries, there are the 9 special invitees, there are several international organizations, and in fact, there will be 43 leaders of the world who will be in Delhi when we hold the G20 meeting in September 9th and 10th. So this will be the most powerful gathering of the world on September 9th and 10th in New Delhi, comprising of 29 countries and about 14 international organizations which are listed here. Now, when India assumes the G20 presidency, we would have seen several challenges. We would see the challenge of climate. We would have seen the challenge of very slow sustainable development goals. Instead of progressing, we have regressed. 2030 is the time by which sustainable development goals were to be achieved. We are midway through. 200 million people have gone below the poverty line. 100 million people have lost their jobs. There's a challenge of the COVID crisis, the post-COVID era. There's a challenge of almost 75 countries facing debt crisis. There's a geopolitical crisis in Europe. And then there is a crisis of food, fertilizer. There's a crisis of all these are big crises, and therefore that is a challenge before India. And this is a challenge before the world. But every crisis, there is an opportunity, and this is a huge opportunity for the world and the global leaders to bring prosperity. Now, how we do the G20 is dependent on 3 things. One is the political narrative, as you will see. The second is about how we build up the issue, that is, how do we build the content around G20? And the third is the administrative and the logistic issues, which my colleagues, very distinguished colleagues here, Mr. Shingla and Mr. Muktesh Pardeshi are dealing here, and Mr. Abhay Thakur, who's seated here, is dealing on the content side. So all these are very critical to the success of a G20. Now, India has a very strong political will. The Prime Minister has elucidated that this is an opportunity to really face the world today by solving all the crises together. He's talked about that India's G20 presidency will advocate the oneness of all. Our theme is, our motto is, and our slogan is one earth, one family, one future, because we are all part of same cosmos. There is unity in diversity. We may have different political systems, we may have different ideologies, but we come from the same cosmos web, and therefore we should advocate the oneness of all. So there is a very strong political will led by the Honorable Prime Minister, and we are also the fastest growing large economy in the world at about 7%. We have sound macroeconomic fundamentals. We have robust public finances. We have strong manufacturing and export growth. We are the top FDI destination. We are a leader in climate change. So all these are driving our growth, and this establishes our leadership. In addition to that, we are the fastest growing large economy. We have smartphone data consumer. We are the number 1 in the world. We are the number 1 in terms of global fintech adoption. And we are number 2 in terms of global retail development index. We are number 3 in terms of startup ecosystem in the world. And therefore, if you see, even number 3 in terms of the size of the economy by PPP, we are the number 2 mobile manufacturer in the world. And therefore, India has really demonstrated to the world that we are leading in terms of technology, and we are poised towards becoming a high-income country by 2047. In addition to that, we've done some remarkable things, one of which is, as you would see here, that we've demonstrated that we've opened about 40 crore new bank accounts since the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana started in 2015, which is equivalent to the entire population of the United States of America and twice the population of Russia. We started the Unified Payment Interface, the UPI. I have not used my debit card, credit card, we use our mobile, which is the bank my mobile bank in India. And for the last 4 years, last year we did 4,860 crore worth of transaction, which is 3x of China's, almost 7x greater than the combined digital payments of USA, Canada, UK. We've given about 36.7 crore LED bulbs, which is like giving LED bulbs to every citizen of USA. We gave affordable houses to 3 crore citizens, which is like providing every single citizen of Australia with a new home. We built 10.9 crore toilets, which is greater than the population of Germany. We built 81 crore households. We provided water connection to 8.1 crore households and 24.3 crore people, which is like providing every single citizen of Brazil with water connection. We've built over 55,000 kilometers of highways in the past 7 years, which is like taking 1.5 rounds of the entire earth. And we have provided over 2 billion COVID-19 vaccines, which is 6 times the population of USA, 5 times the population of Europe, 2.5 times the population of EU and USA combined. And we cover over 50 crore people in the form of Ayushman Bharat scheme, which is more citizens covered than the entire population of European Union. Now that has been the achievement in the last 7 to 8 years of India, the size and scale of which you will understand. And all of you as overseas Indians and NRIs are really the people who should market and promote what the size and scale to which we have done the transformation of India. Now G20 is a whole of government approach. It has the finance minister and the central bank governors, their meetings. There's a Sherpa track, there's a foreign ministers meeting. There are almost 11 engagement groups. So we have over about 215 meetings in 56 cities of India. So the Honorable Prime Minister said that this is an opportunity to clean up our cities, much like Indore has got transformed because of Pravasi, Bharatiya, and it has become the cleanest city in the world. This is an opportunity to make 56 cities of India the best cities of the world. This is an opportunity to promote our soft power, that is all our cultural heritage. It is an opportunity to promote our handicrafts through one district, one product. And this is an opportunity really to showcase India to the world. We are, as Mrs. Shingla will talk at length, we are doing this in 56 cities. There are several ministerial meetings being held. And in addition to that, there are, within the Sherpa track, we are doing several working groups meetings across various cities of India. And the whole of government approach means that every single ministry is involved, the finance ministry is involved, and then there are various engagement groups, which is non-governmental nature. That is engagement groups where civil society is involved and they are driving development and change. They are promoting the brand value of India, they're promoting the goals, so they support the Sherpa track in many ways by their recommendations. This year we started a startup group, which is very important, startup engagement groups, because India's the number 3 best ecosystem for startups. We have about 80,000 startups. We've developed about 110 unicorns. Their value is about 340 billion. We are doing about 80 startups a day now. When we started the Startup India movement in 2016, there were just about 116 startups. Today we have 80,000 startups. In India, we are creating 4 unicorns a month. There are only 6 months to a unicorn, whereas in other countries it's taking 3 to 4 years. And therefore, one of the key engagement group is the startup group. Now, our shared priorities are very important because we want to shape an inclusive future. We are sharing India's experience during G20. We want the world to benefit on key global issues from India. And therefore, as you will see, what are India's priorities? Our priorities are that how do we accelerate growth, inclusive and resilient growth? How do we bring in technological transformation? How do we push digital public infrastructure, which India has built up? How do we do women-led development, because more than 50% of the world is women? How do we drive accelerated progress on sustainable development goals? How do we bring in live green development, climate finance? And how do we build multilateral institutions for the 21st centuries? And how do we face the challenge of fuel, food and fertilizer, which are major challenges before the world today? So these are India's G20 priorities, which we'll push all through our G20, and these are key priorities for the world as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the key issues about digital transformation to the world is that the Bank of International Settlement has said that India in the last 7 years has made progress which would have taken 50 years to achieve. We have achieved this in about 7 to 8 years. If you look at the world, we have achieved this in 50 years progress in 7 years. But if you look at the world, there are 400 crore people who do not have a digital identity. Everybody in India has a digital identity. Everybody in India has a bank account. 200 crore people do not have bank, they are unbanked. And 133 countries in the world do not have a digital payment system. So how do we create the India model for the rest of the world is a very major challenge, and that is what we will try and push. The other is India's digital payment infrastructure, which has been built up, which has been talked all over the world. Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai were all here, they were all talking about it. If you look at it, in 2013, we had done direct benefit transfer of only 10,000 crore. In 2020, we have done transfer of 5.5 lakh crore. So we were able to help 47 crore people during the COVID phase by putting money directly into their bank account. So this was the key. And that is how the digital public infrastructure has helped the people of the world. Now what India has done is to create the best digital public infrastructure model, which is the JAM Trinity, the UPI, the CoWIN, the Bharat Bill Pay, our tax collection is all digital, Swayam, Diksha in education, digital health, e-governance services, digital toll system. So the digital transformation has enabled India to technologically leapfrog in many, many ways, and that has been the hallmark of India's growth story in the last 7 to 8 years. How do you build railway tracks on which we've allowed private sector to innovate and take it forward. Similarly, the great story of India is the story of health architecture, because we have provided health insurance to close to about 500 crore people, which is more than the population of Europe. We are the vaccine capital of the world. We are the pharmacy capital of the world. We've provided vaccines to 75 countries in the world. We are the generic drug capital of the world. We have converged Ayurveda and yoga with our health, and these are key challenges. These are the big ticket things that we have pushed in the world as far as health is concerned, and we built a robust inclusive health model for India, which can then be taken to the rest of the world. Now, the Prime Minister wants us to do, this to be a complete whole of government approach. So we are doing several things. We are linking up with festivals, doing outreach, on which Mr. Shingla will talk about it at length. We are linking this up with festivals of India. He'll talk about it. But our objective is that we create a unique Indian experience, which is very spiritually elevating, which is culturally enriching for every visitor who comes from abroad, which is mentally rejuvenating and physically invigorating. Our objective is that every visitor who comes from abroad may be a representative of his country, must go back totally spiritually as an Indian when he comes here. And that is what we'll try and do. That is what we've done when we took the ambassadors to Andaman. We taught them yoga. They went to the cellular jail to get a feel of India's great independence movement. They did the Shankhnad. They actually cleaned the beaches in Andaman. When we took them to Udaipur, Udaipur was a transformed city. We welcomed them. We cleaned, the whole city was cleaned up, but we gave them a Rajasthani style pagadi welcome. They all did digital shopping, completely digital experience. They did the camel rides. Their shopping was all completely unique of Indian handicrafts. They interacted with the school children. And this is the meeting which we had in Udaipur, which was excellent, and we shared a lot of millets, because India's attempting, this is the year of millets, and therefore our focus was on millets. We took them to Kumbhalgarh, which is the biggest wall, one of the greatest forts in the world. It was totally lit up, and we did some great cultural programs there. And this is the city palace, which was lit up. So just giving you a glimpse of how we did our branding, and we said that starting with Udaipur, we'll see you soon in another city of India, and then we took them to Mumbai, where all the roads were cleaned up, all the potholes were cleaned up, the city was whitewashed completely, it was lit up, and there was a huge cultural experience all over, and they had a great experience of the heritage sites there. And the interaction was similarly in Bangalore. We are using this as an opportunity to demonstrate our culture, our cities, and as the Prime Minister said, our presidency would be inclusive, it will be ambitious, it will be action-oriented, and very, very decisive. And that is how we'll steer it, but we'll put a great Indian experience. Now, what do we expect from this is a huge unparalleled opportunity for India and the world. And the next decade, as Morgan Stanley has just said, that the 4 trends of demographics, digitization, decarbonization, and deglobalization are favoring New India. This is what Morgan Stanley has just said about a month back, and therefore we will use the growth process of India, the dynamism of India, the demographics of India, the digitization of India, the decarbonization of India, all to drive the story. And all of you are really the brand ambassadors, as the Prime Minister said in the morning. And therefore, members of the diaspora have a huge role to play in G20. They can share our values and help further the presidency efforts abroad. You can spread awareness about India's financial inclusion and technological transformation model. We'll be very happy to share this with you. You can help us to popularize global initiatives that resonate with our culture and our G20 presidency. You can promote India's narrative globally on all the digital transformation that has taken place, on Swachh Bharat, on Life, on UPI, on CoWIN, on Aadhaar, on millets. There can be nobody better than to push for digital transformation, for women-led development, for sustainability, climate-based initiatives. You can vocalize the Indian narrative. All of you have a very major role to play, and you are our brand ambassadors for G20. And therefore, you can promote issues and initiatives prioritized. You can be our cultural ambassador. You can popularize all our initiatives such as yoga, Ayurveda, lifestyles, digital payments, and you can organize events and activities in your respective countries to highlight issues taken up by India during its G20 presidency. All of you have a major role because you can support businesses and initiatives that align with the goals and priorities of our G20 presidency. You can start discussion on issues that India will take up through your conferences, workshop, and other events, and you can engage extensively with media and share India's G20 priorities. We will welcome all of you to play a major and key role in this. So, ladies and gentlemen, I request you all to be the brand ambassadors of India G20 presidency. We'll be very, very happy to handhold you, to work in partnership with you, and to assist and support you in making India's G20 presidency a unique experience for the rest of the world. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. May I now request my colleague, Mr. Shingla, who's been our Foreign Secretary. He's been our ambassador in Washington, in Thailand, in Bangladesh, who's managing all, the chief coordinator on all G20 issues. May I request him to kindly make his presentation. Mr. Shingla, please.
Namaskar and good evening. I'm just trying to see if I can speak without using the microphone. Can we just raise the volume here? I hope you can, I'm not sure if people can hear me. Okay, so let me just go back here. I do have a remote mic, but I think we'll have to rely on technology as it stands. First of all, let me say how happy I am to see so many of our friends here, and we welcome you both to India and to the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Sherpa Shri Amitabh Kant has already given you a very detailed perspective on how we intend to conduct our G20 presidency. We have to remember one or two things. First, that this is the first time India has ever become president of the G20. It's a unique opportunity for us, not only to place our narratives on the global agenda, but also to showcase our development, our experiences, our cultural heritage, our diversity, and also our tourism potential. So much of what our planning is about the G20 presidency is linked to some of this, I would say, background in terms of our presidency objectives. So the Prime Minister has already said, he said that this is a big opportunity in the Amrit Kal. It's unprecedented curiosity in the world to know India. He's spoken about, that G20 presidency is a matter of pride for every Indian, and that this is an opportunity to take India's development to the world. I mean, I paraphrased it earlier, but the Prime Minister has put the rationale behind our G20 presidency. Now, Sherpa, just a short while ago, said that what we would like all of you to be is our G20 brand ambassadors. I think there is no better group of people who could articulate India's presidency and its own goals and ambitions, and other than what we have in terms of the delegates who are here at the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. So I think I just want to say a few words on what could be the possible involvement of our diaspora. First, of course, is to introduce the world to India's thinking. I think our narrative is something that has been outlined by Amitabh ji, and I think something that is what you could articulate when you go out and into your countries and the places where you're based. Of course, G20 has 2-3 structures. One is a government-to-government structure, but the other is also non-governmental engagement groups, what we call them. There's the Women 20, Youth 20, Urban 20, there is Think 20, Civil 20, Business 20. And I think in each of these engagement groups, you will find your niche and you will find your area. And we're most happy if you can be represented from your countries and come and participate here. And of course, you could also organize activities that coincide with G20 meetings in your own countries. As Sherpa said, we'd be more than happy to support you in that endeavor. But more, I think that really the larger perspective is that we would like you to be our G20 ambassadors in the wide world out there, and especially in the G20 countries, but also, of course, in the countries that are not G20 countries, because for India, the view of the global south, the developing world, is very important. And in a few days from now, we will have this summit on the global south, which will take into account the views and perspectives of countries from the developing world, so that those can be reflected in the way we approach our presidency in the G20. This, you've seen this briefly. Essentially, the general philosophy and the general, I would say, vision of the Prime Minister is that the G20 presidency of ours should not be confined to Delhi. As you know that in the past when we've had summits such as the CHOGM and the NAM summits in 1983 or the India-Africa Forum Summit, they were in Delhi. But the G20 has 200 odd meetings that we'd be organizing, and the Prime Minister feels that they should be organized in every part of India. So you will see that we'll be organizing 215 meetings until we reach the summit in September this year in every state and union territory of India, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and from Kutch to Kohima. You will find that there is a G20 meeting in every part of our country. Now, what is the philosophy behind having it all over the country? What is the objective? I think one major objective is to ensure that every part of our country feels a certain involvement in the G20 process. It is not something which is remote and which is held in Delhi, and most people in our country don't know what it's all about. It's essentially the idea of taking it to every part of the country is to ensure that every state is a stakeholder, every citizen of India is a stakeholder, and that the message of India's G20 presidency is intelligible to every citizen of India. And I'll come down to that also as we go along. So here you see, at a comparative level, many other G20 presidencies have also tried to broad-base their G20 presidencies by having meetings in many cities of their country. Indonesia held it in 25 cities. In 2016, China held it in 12 cities. But in 2023, we are going to hold it in 56 cities, and this is a record in the G20. And I very much doubt any country in the world will be able to match this record of 56 locations in which G20 meetings will be held. Of course, it is a great opportunity for India, but this we've already gone through. I mean, it is an opportunity to showcase our development, tourism potential, culture, also our business-to-business contacts, and of course, promoting our narratives such as lifestyle for environment, sustainable development, and other areas that are important. This also Sherpa has focused on, but let me try and give you the perspective. Jan Bhagidari is the mode by which we will take the narrative of our G20 presidency down to the grassroots level in India. In other words, we will make sure that every part of our country is familiar with what India's G20 presidency is, what our objectives are, what we are seeking to do, and every person in our country feels that he's a part of this G20 presidency. So this is a mass movement, I would say, that involves all the way from universities to schools, to festivals, through quizzes and essay competitions, through marathons, essentially anything that captures the popular imagination, where there are large numbers of people. There will be branding on G20, there will be information on G20, and people will be involved with the G20 process. Even while you came to the Pravasi, you would have seen a number of branding initiatives speaking about the G20, and that is how we intend to take it out to the entire country. So it's a very important domestic objective to ensure that it is something that is comprehensible to each and every person in our country. So what are the instances? I'll just give you some examples of Jan Bhagidari by which we have taken G20 to the rest of our country. One of the very, very pertinent examples is when we tried to develop a logo for the G20. Now, how do you develop a logo? There are many ways, but here is a unique way. We used crowdsourcing. In other words, we made it open to everybody who could enter into a competition and who could actually give ideas about what our logo should be. And through crowdsourcing, we got 2,000 entries, and some of the best entries were used. And I think the logo that you see before you is actually a synthesis of a number of ideas that have come from the public. So the public has been involved right from the beginning in creating our logo. And if you think that logo represents our ethos, then it is really coming from the grassroots level, right from the citizen himself. And the Prime Minister himself released the logo in a virtual address. And I think this is popularized all over the country. People got to know what India's G20 logo is, what the theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future meant. Here you can see that on the 1st of December, when we actually took over our presidency, here is the famous sand artist of India, Sri Patnaik in Odisha, in the International Sand Art Festival, who created this model G20 presidency on sand. And here you can see that on the 1st of December, 100 prominent monuments in India were lit up with the G20 logo, right from Mahabalipuram to Sanchi Stupa in Madhya Pradesh, from Nalanda to Red Fort in Delhi, and from Kumbhalgarh in Rajasthan to Butterball in Mahabalipuram again in Tamil Nadu. And what we did is that we organized a selfie competition. Public was invited to participate to take selfies in front of these monuments with the G20 lit up, and the best photographs were uploaded on the website. The idea was to involve the public, to get them associated and to make them feel that they're part of this overall exercise. It's not a remote exercise, it is one that involves each and every citizen. And here we can see that on the 1st of December, there is something called the University Connect. This program was organized in Delhi, but 75 universities all over the country, including in the 56 locations where we'll have our G20 meetings, participated in full force. And students from all over the country were very happy to be part of this process. And when we've also asked them to be student brand ambassadors for the G20. You can see the marathon, marathons like the Mumbai Marathon, quiz and essay and slogan writing competitions in schools have become very popular. And universities, as I said, will continue to have sessions which will debate the G20. So we have a model UN, we also have a model G20, and that will be increasingly, I think, discussed in schools and participated by students all over the country. Here you see festivals. One festival which is in Northeast, which is the Sangai Festival in Manipur. Our Minister of External Affairs, Dr. Jaishankar, was there, interacted with youth, with students. There was a selfie booth of the G20. So this is the first time that people got to know, in these parts of our country what the G20 was about. The 1st of December also had the inauguration of the Hornbill Festival in Nagaland. Again, G20 was the theme. Here you can see the Kite Festival inaugurated yesterday on Makar Sankranti in Ahmedabad in Gujarat, where the G20 kite was very prominent, and many of our participants flew the G20 kite, including Consul General from the G20 countries in Mumbai participated in this exercise. Khajuraho Dance Festival is there. We also will release G20 coins and stamps. So please look out for these coins and stamps. They will be released in the stamps, of course, will be in the public domain, but there will be special commemorative G20 coins which will be out fairly soon. This just gives you a sense. Look, in every meeting there are 3-4 facets of participation. I'll run through that in the next slide. But here is an example of the welcome that G20 ambassadors received when they came to the Andaman Islands, a very special part of our country. So this is Port Blair, where they've just landed in an aircraft and they're being received in a very distant part of our country, distant from the mainland, but yeah, nonetheless, I think very, very important part of our country. And this is an example of their welcome. This you've already seen in Udaipur when they arrived. Here is a sense of how a G20 conference hall looks like. You have to have a very large table which can seat 43 representatives, all equally seated, so that there is no distinction between G20 members and others. And of course, you need a very large space to have a conference of that magnitude. Some of the activities we organized, beach cleaning, yoga, these are delegates who are there, and I think all of them have enjoyed these activities thoroughly. This is an excursion, just an example of an excursion where in Port Blair we took them to the cellular jail where many of our freedom fighters were incarcerated. And again, a good example of iconic places where we want to take delegates and show them our history, our culture, and our heritage. This is an example of the Indian experience. The Prime Minister has said we want to hold an impeccable and uniquely Indian G20 presidency. And that is our effort, to make it a uniquely Indian presidency. When you go to Rajasthan, this is, the lady you can see here is the Sherpa of Saudi Arabia. She's clearly, thoroughly feeling what India's color and vibrancy is all about. The other lady feels the culture, in Rajasthan. And here in Maharashtra, in Mumbai, many of the delegates partake in the festivities. And India Gate, the gateway to India, was lit up in G20 colors and also was made a very special occasion when the development working group took place there. This photograph you've already seen. This is a gala dinner cum cultural program. This is the Kumbhalgarh Fort. And here are cultural programs in Rajasthan, which are typically folk dance from Rajasthan. The idea is that every state and union territory we take our guests to. If that meeting is going to be held, say, in Tamil Nadu, then we'll try and give them a taste of Tamil culture, Tamil cuisine. If they're going to be in Jammu and Kashmir, they will be given a sense of what Kashmiri food is all about, what Kashmiri culture is all about. They'll be taken to the prominent sites in that state. So we promote India, we promote it holistically, but we also promote it regionally. And we give these states an opportunity to market themselves and to make them their attributes well known to our very, very prominent visitors from the G20 countries. So branding, we do a lot of branding, and I've already said what sort of branding that we do. But essentially, the objective is to ensure that the message of G20 goes around widely, and delegates also feel welcome that there is an attention on the G20. So these are some examples of branding that we've had in Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and other places. This you've already seen, a very unique sense of branding. When delegates leave the city, they're told, we hope to see you in another part of India. Now, one aspect of it is merchandise. We are developing T-shirts, caps, this lapel that this young girl is wearing, water bottles. All of this we hope to merchandise soon, and I'm sure OSD Muktesh Pradesi will be able to speak more on that in the Q&A. But the idea is that this sort of merchandising should be available on a very wide scale, and whoever wants to access it. We're also encouraging corporates, schools, others to take up G20 merchandising and branding so it becomes more popularized. Here are some examples of delegate kits. What do we give the delegates when they come to India? They get a millet box with millets that are traditionally part of our cuisine. They get colorful delegate kits. They get, this is not standard. This varies from meeting to meeting because we don't want every meeting to have the same product. But this just gives you a sense of what we're giving delegates when they come here. What are the items? What are they made of? There's a lot of thought that has gone into what items should constitute delegate kits. For example, for the water bottle you see there, we are using Kani work from Jammu and Kashmir. There's a shawl art which from Himachal Pradesh that is used to make bookmarks. There is the Patin Patola from Gujarat that is used to make the folder. And there's a Kantha from West Bengal for the scarf. And similarly, from Tamil Nadu, you have the Kanjivaram silk, which makes the outline of the bag that you get, the delegates get, and Madhubani art from Bihar for the mugs that are there. And these are just examples, don't take them literally, but I'm trying to give you a sense of what goes into making products that G20 delegates will receive and will see. And as the Sherpa mentioned, each delegate will get a gift from that particular state or district that he's based in. Based on our one district, one product initiative, essentially that wherever you are, you will get the best product of that area. And I think that will represent the state or the district in which they are holding the meeting. Training is very important. We have trained our people to equip them to deal with the G20 presidency. Not only are there people being trained at different levels. Here you can see a training program for drivers in foreign languages. Here you can see a meeting for liaison officers from all the ministries that are going to host G20 meetings. There are 1,000 officers who are trained in how to deal with foreign delegates. Here's a security training program for police, soft skills for police. How do you have non-intrusive policing? How do you ensure security but at the same time not inconvenience delegates and the local populace? These are parts of the training that we're imparting. Here you can see guides being trained in Kolkata, guides, taxi drivers, different elements that go into what people would be associated with or those who would come into contact with G20 delegates. We are also, I think Sherpa did mention that one of our objectives when we host the G20 in every part of our country is to create capacity. 56 locations, many of these locations have limited infrastructure. Many of these locations also have never been internationally exposed. They've never had conferences of this nature. We're taking the G20 to the furthest corners of India, but in doing so, we're telling all the states and all those who are hosting these meetings that please develop capacity, transform the state, transform the locations that these meetings are being held, use this opportunity to make the change that is essential. In Udaipur, we saw that roads were repaired, places was cleaned up, a lot of work had been done, similarly in Mumbai, and we want to see that all over the country, that the beautification that you see in Indore is something that we will replicate all over the country. So this is essentially just a short sense of how we will organize the G20 presidency. What are the salient features? One is that it is a unique experience for us. We have never done this before. There is no casebook or copybook from which we can get a sense of precedence about how it's done. It's the first time we're doing it, but I can assure you that this G20 presidency will be the best ever, and no country would have ever done a presidency of the nature that we have done, both substantively and logistically. We count on your support. Please do support our initiative. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, respected Shri Shringla. So we are going to play a film. For India, the beginning of the Amrit Kal also marks another historic first as it takes over the G20 presidency. So we now present audiovisual in front of you of India's G20 presidency. So let's have a look. This is about the theme.
As the world arrives in India to shape a common global future, India leads the way with its own golden period of inclusive and sustainable growth, the Amrit Kal. A new era signifying India's development from its 75th year of independence to its 100th. An epic journey towards becoming a beacon of global growth. The Prime Minister's call for inclusive development in the Amrit Kal will be further substantiated during India's G20 presidency through our theme of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. One Earth, one family, one future. A vision that aims at bringing people together to build a better future for everyone. To achieve that goal, significant national priorities were charted out and set in motion. India's technological and digital innovation will become engines for the future of inclusive growth and connectivity. Our environment initiatives, including LIFE, will ensure true prosperity by promoting sustainable lifestyles through individual and collective action to protect and preserve the environment. Through inclusive economic growth, India will spearhead universal benefits that serve long-term interests of people with compassion, equality, and solidarity, leaving no one behind. India's focus on women-led development will continue empowering women into contributing to the larger economy. With the promise of peace, harmony, and security, India will build a world where every individual finds a perfect ground to blossom fully.
हम वो लोग हैं जिसने दुनिया का कल्याण देखा है। लोग जब दुनिया की कामना करते हैं तब कहते हैं सर्वे अपि सुखिनः सन्तु सर्वे सन्तु निरामया।
The importance of collective action is stronger than ever before, and G20 India shall strive to build a collective and inclusive shared future. India's G20 theme holds these national priorities together like the petals of the lotus, blooming victorious from the pool of challenges, holding our planet in a warm embrace, blossoming into a better tomorrow.
आज मैं ये आश्वासन देना चाहता हूं कि भारत की G20 अध्यक्षता इंक्लूसिव, एम्बिशियस, डिसिसिव और एक्शन ओरिएंटेड होगी।
Our G20 meetings are planned in different cities and states of our country to provide an enriching experience of India's amazing diversity and inclusive traditions for our guests from different corners of the world. We wish for each and every one of you to participate in this unique celebration that is India. Welcome to G20 India. One Earth, one family, one future.
वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम्।
तो अब हम एक रीकैप आपके सामने प्रस्तुत कर रहे हैं, रीकैप ऑफ द इवेंट्स फ्रॉम द फर्स्ट मंथ ऑफ इंडियाज G20 प्रेसिडेंसी. सो लेट्स वॉच.
इस आयोजन को एक जन आंदोलन बनाना है.
We have to make the world India ready.
Today is a watershed moment for India and her 1.41 billion citizens.
Our perspective is that we should have a win-win collaboration between all of us.
This was just the beginning. There is a lot lined up in 2023 under India's presidency, under our theme of One Earth, One Family, One Future.
And this is your very favorite segment, that is question answer segment. So we have amongst us Shri Harshvardhan Shringlaji, Chief Coordinator G20 Secretariat, and we have also with us Ambassador Shri Mukesh K. Pardeshi, OSD G20 Operations, and Ambassador Shri Abhay Thakur, Additional Secretary G20. So the floor is all yours, and may I have the questions, please? We have 3 dignitaries on the desk. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Amitabh Panji, thank you so much, sir. It was very insightful, and I congratulate first of you that India has got G20. Myself, Shweta Ajmera, chartered accountant and lawyer. That's why I have more interest in this field. I would first request you to please allot Indore for the 56 cities. My personal request that we will do it a grand success in Indore. And second thing, the question which I would like to ask is that how digitalization would be taking place in the G20 thing?
Amitabh Kanji has left already, so we are 3 dignitaries, as I told you. So your question is to?
Sorry, I didn't saw the, yeah.
Mr. Shringlaji, you can answer this question, I believe.
I don't know if the sound system is good enough to reach you.
आप cordless यहाँ पे दे दीजिए एक. We need a cordless here so that he can answer from there.
That I can answer, sir. About public digital infrastructure.
One cordless, please. It's there?
It's
Okay.
working now. It's working now.
No, thank you, Shwetaji. I think that's a very good question. First of all, we do recognize that we have come to the cleanest city in India, Indore, and that factor weighed in heavily. I mean, as both Mukteshji and Abhayji will tell you, while we were planning the locations of cities where we would hold G20, one of the indexes was Swachh Bharat Index. That means that where do locations stand in that index? And Indore came first, so we couldn't possibly have left Indore out in the meetings of the G20. So we will certainly have at least one meeting, if not more meetings here. And you can be sure that that Indore will be the center of attention at some stage in our G20 presidency. With regard to the digital side of it, what we are saying is that our record in digital transformations. The Prime Minister in Bali said that 40% of the globe's digital transactions came from UPI. In other words, 40% of digital transactions anywhere in the world is from India. So financial inclusion and the use of digital means for financial services has become almost a way of life in our country. So, look at the digital platforms that we have for digital public good. Whether it is, it is CoWin platform, whether it is, for the Arogya Setu platform for the COVID pandemic, or whether it is platforms for financial inclusion, direct benefits transfer, in whichever way possible, we are reaching every part of our country through the digital process. The digital divide no longer exists in India. So today we are saying that we will highlight and showcase our digital achievements and try and replicate this at scale in the rest of the world, especially the developing world. And we want the G20 to assist us in that process. In other words, it is through the means of the G20 we will take it to the rest of the world. And a lot of work has been done in that regard, and I think we will use this as a very strong priority in our presidency. Digital transformations, digital public goods, digital services will become a very, very important part of our priority of our G20 presidency. Do you want to say anything on this further, Abhay?
No, thank you, sir. I will only add that, digital health, digital agriculture, digital tourism, you name it. And the idea that public digital infrastructure could be the foundation on which private sector can innovate and have so many startups that our Sherpa spoke about. If we can universalize this model and get it, adopted with national conditions in different countries, this will be a huge message from India of financial inclusion, of enabling hundreds of millions to be lifted out of poverty across the globe, as well as promote our IT sector, our IT industry, and really position India as a unique digital superpower. And G20 can be a vehicle for that, which we will leverage to the maximum. Thank you.
The next
Hello,
question.
Sir. Hello.
Too many hands.
Hello, sir. Amok here. So firstly, I want to thank you, and I totally agree whatever you said, because it would definitely give a global exposure.
Please stand. We are not able to trace.
Yeah.
Okay, you're there. Okay.
Yeah. So firstly, I want to thank you, and I totally agree on whatever you just said, because I have also worked in technology and I'm working abroad, and I have asked my company to expand to tier 2 cities like Indore, and they have never heard of it. So as a global exposure, it adds, and I can easily demonstrate. One question which I want to add is, how can the youth contribute to this? So, like if you need any digital platform or any other suggestions you have for youth, that would be very useful. How can we connect to it?
Yeah. So, both to showcase how startups can work on a public digital infrastructure. This is one, area where youth can bring a lot of digital, public goods are really being popularized and understood better by the youth. It is not just about, a computer with a few, gimmicks on it, there is so much more that the entire economy and the entire digital public good platform can be run, and in this the youth have a massive involvement. So for example, involvement of the startups, involvement of all the new innovations that are going across universities in the digital sector, digital agriculture, digital health. All of this, I think youth are the natural connection with this. IT universities across the world, as IT, business chambers across the world. I think there is no limit to how much everyone, in particular the youth, can connect with the digital narrative.
Agreed. And sir, want to add, just one more thing. Something I've seen studying and working abroad would be good if we can add a global talent program, so we can get talent from there, which can contribute to learning of society in India, and vice versa.
Next question.
Hello, sir. Here, my question is on UPI and the central bank digital currency that you are going to launch next. It is a fantastic piece of innovation. I mean, not only for developing nations, even for developed nations to adopt that technology is a massive feat. Because I went to Canada the technology that we have here is one of the world's leader. How can we be brand ambassadors of this technology? And how are you able to provide this technology at almost no fee in India, which is fascinating? And if some country has to adopt this, would you be charging a fee? How would it work? And how can we be brand ambassadors of this payment technology, whether it be UPI or whether it's going to be the CBDC that you're going to launch very soon? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be quick. So what we are trying to do in the G20 is to get a framework, guiding framework for countries to be adopted, what can be called as a high-level principles of public digital infrastructure, which will encompass all of this, that the platform should be open source, that the platform should be accessible, that it should be consent-based data with, access to bank accounts, with digital transfers, while at the same time having a digital legal architecture that also protects the privacy. So in India, we see it already a hugely successful model for a country of 1.3 billion. So if we can universalize this model, we have framed some high-level principles. We hope that it will get adopted in the G20, whereafter it will be much easier to take it to countries across the world. And we will make sure that we develop a win-win kind of approach where big tech can ride on the rails of public digital infrastructure. So it's work in progress. I think by July, August this year, we would have very clear idea of how this model of public digital infrastructure will be universalized, and thereafter all of you could come into play. But in the meantime, talking about RuPay cards, for example, talking about UPI, and sheer, I would say, advocacy platforms until the summit should be a priority for the diaspora as well. Thank you. And very quickly, global skill mapping is very much a priority to what the earlier colleague mentioned, including for talent visas in both STEM and arts and culture. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I am Pradeep Kedia at your 1 o'clock here. So it was a real nice video, and that gave me goosebumps when it was about Jan Andolan. And I reside in Abu Dhabi, and last 5 to 6 years I have witnessed a lot of global preparation, whether it is T20 World Cup or even in Qatar, the FIFA World Cup. And I come from Odisha, which is my home state, and I was lucky enough to even witness the hockey preparations at the Hockey World Cup. And one common observation when we see about the host cities is the preparation, like the whole Qatar was dug out until few months, until the preparation happened. And even in Bhubaneswar, I witnessed that from the airport to the destinations, those were the only areas which were uplifted. And I can totally understand, because that's what probably in the limited time and the limited resources we could do. But when I heard about the Jan Andolan, I thought probably this is the time we are doing things a bit differently, whether we don't shy away from even showing the areas of improvement, like we don't do cover up, and we probably have a better involvement of the local administration, so that the host cities do a great job, not only hosting the guest, but also the entire journey of that particular host cities and India. They feel contributed and not just harassed, or maybe not just that we just uplift the limited areas which are hosted, but the upliftment of the cities in total.
Yeah, we got the idea. So
Thank you.
Let's answer.
Well, the whole idea is not to conceal anything. If we had to conceal, we would not take international delegates to 56 locations. The idea is we have an opportunity before us, and we prepare our cities and towns to host international delegates. In that process, the lots of focus is given on infrastructural preparedness. At the same time, we also would like to present the regional culture, cuisine, crafts, and tourism potential to its best. So that's the idea. And of course, when we are planning these meetings at 56 locations, we are adopting best practices which we learn from outside and within the country.
Yeah, next question.
Good afternoon, sir. I am Dr. Harsh Sethi from Bangkok, Thailand. Harshvardhanji Shringla, sir, we have met you, we have been associated with you in Bangkok, Thailand. It has been a pleasure, and we are really proud to see your progress being an ambassador in Thailand to now the G20 Sherpa convener, sir. Congratulations, sir. Congratulations. My question is that having lived in abroad in Thailand for 35 years and associated with different chambers of commerce, how could we contribute and associate it with the G20 initiative, sir? Thank you.
Let me say what a pleasure it is to reconnect with you, Harsh.
Thank you, sir.
I remember a lot of the initiatives you took in Thailand to promote business-to-business ties. And actually in the G20, as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of engagement groups. And these engagement groups are non-governmental in nature, and they cover a very wide spectrum of many of the areas of profession and interests that could be there. You could be involved, in gender-related issues. You have the W20, which is the Women's 20. You may be involved in youth issues. You have the Youth 20. You might be involved in urban planning. You have the Urban 20. Or you might be in business like yourselves, and there's the B20. So there is a scope to involve yourself, but keep in mind that this is the limited membership. The G20 includes, 19 countries and one organization that are sort of, cover a very broad spectrum of the world's economy and world's population and the world's trade. So not all countries are involved in that, but it's an inclusive process. We have invitee countries. We also invite some countries for certain meetings, etc. I would certainly suggest that at the level of the chambers in Thailand and any other country, you should organize parallel events that are linked to our B20 process. And our, interlocutors, I'll also ask Ambassador Abhay Thakur, who is dealing with the B20 process, or the CII, which is our nodal organization B20, to see how we can involve chambers, even if you're not members. But the G20, by its very nature and by the Prime Minister's vision, is to make it inclusive. So involve as many sections as possible within our country and outside our country. So that is why we've had this meeting today, try and get a sense of your thinking and to see how we can best involve you. And I'm sure, we can take it up from there.
So the question, thank you, sir. The question should be,
just a second,
just wanted to say, the question should be very precise, to the point, please.
The question is to Shringla Sahib. It's Prameet Makode from Boston. So 3 years back, we have hosted you and invited you to Boston Center of Excellence. And I am originally from Indore, so now we are welcoming you here. So thanks, sir. So now about G20, you already given enough insight on the digital initiative. So one question is about how G20 is going to help the developing African nations, because there are more than 40 countries out of 57 countries which are really in a state where they need a lot of help. So how India under its leadership can help Africa, and as I said, digitally aapne bataya, and particularly in the agriculture sector, there is thousands and thousands of acres of agriculture land that we can help, and also on the deforestation and the carbon credit side. So if you could throw some light and give us some insight, that would be helpful, sir.
Thank you so much, Amitji. It's good to see you here. You know, Africa is a very important and priority continent for us. Not only because it, you know, a very large number of developing countries are there, but a lot of the issues that we dealt with in the presentation that Sherpa made, you know, 4 billion people who are without identity cards, the exclusion aspect is very prominent in Africa. Which is why in our presidency, I think we have the largest representation of Africa that has ever been there in any G20 presidency. We have 6 African countries that will take part in under our presidency. South Africa is already a member of G20. African Union will be there, so that's African Union President will be there. Okay. NEPAD President, which is Rwanda, will be there. We've invited Nigeria, we've invited Egypt, and we've invited Mauritius. So we'll have 6 countries from Africa, the largest representation ever. I did mention that in a short while we will have the Voice of the Global South, in other words, a summit that involves the developing countries. Our idea is to garner the views of the developing world and to see what the thinking is and to factor that thinking into our presidency. Okay. And Africa again will be an important part of that. Recovering degraded land, for example, as you mentioned, is a very important objective in successive G20 presidencies from Saudi Arabia. And we will be taking up some of these issues. I'll also ask if my colleagues want to, I think Abhay, you want to say something?
Like on the organic farming or
yes,
agriculture?
I mean, yeah, very quickly, you know, debt crisis, this is something that is facing the world, largely many African countries. So this is going to be right on top of the agenda of G20 on what to do with the common framework for, you know, on debt in terms of how the finance ministers can deal with it. In addition, in terms of agriculture, the whole idea of a food security initiative, you know, not only connecting farmer to the marketplace, agriculture market information system, nutritious food, talking about, you know, global food security with carve-outs or regimes which will facilitate freer food and agriculture trade and investment. So this whole, you know, whole global food security initiative, together with digital agriculture, climate smart agriculture, are very important themes for G20, which will help Africa. The other important point is the new, you know, collective quantified goal for climate finance. That is another major area, expansion and enhancement of the mandate of the multilateral development banks, international financial institutions, so that they can fund green projects, you know, credit enhancement for projects in developing countries, including largely in Africa. So I think credit enhancement, climate finance, international food security, financial inclusion, 6 countries of Africa, you know, being invited. I think there's a very major focus on Africa on the whole.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Always a pleasure.
Hello. Yeah. Sir, here, my name is Satish Kota from an international engagement platform, Navatize. My question is, what is the future of G20? Are we looking at undermining UN, which is being controlled by the top 5? Are we going to divide the influence of those 5 and set it out to others, and the rest, the world is expected to do that? Otherwise, UN is always been controlled by the big 5 and the rest of the countries has no value around that.
No, in fact, I think that's the very, you know, I would just pick that word because it was provocative. There's no you know, of undermining any other institution. That's not at all the case. In fact, the idea is to strengthen and multilateralism and make it more effective. That is what the G20 is all about. Also, there is a fundamental difference between G20, which is a group, It's a group of 20. It is not an international organization in itself. Unlike the UN or the IMF or the World Bank or the WHO or the WTO, the G20 is a group of leaders of 20 top economies of the world which come together to deliberate on global issues, on how global challenges should be dealt with. So therefore, it provides direction, it provides guidance, it complements and supplements the work of the international organizations, it strengthens them and makes them more effective, whether it is credit enhancement for multilateral development banks, whether it is talking about WHO recognition of pharmaceuticals, collaborations, whether it is talking about the enforcement of the dispute settlement mechanism of the WTO. All of these are strengthening the multilateral system and making it more effective so that they can deliver the public goods that they set out, that they were created for. So that is what the G20 is doing. It is not competing or undermining any other organization. It is a guidance body of top 20 leaders of economies of the world which strengthen multilateralism. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
Yeah, hello. This is Seema Aluwalia. I would like to congratulate you, sir. And would like to know if there is a quorum for G20 women cell which we can contribute. Like I'm an automobile engineer, so I would like to be part of active G20 forum. So for the women in as a woman cell. Thank you. That's my question, sir.
Thank you. G20 is essentially an intergovernmental forum, but to supplement the work of the intergovernmental forum, there is a very vibrant and active track called engagement groups. And there are more than 10 engagement groups, including one focusing on women. Let me share with the audience, and you would like to follow G20 activities through our website, Twitter handle, Instagram and Facebook. Most of the engagement groups have set up their own websites and they have social media handles. So you could connect with the activities of the Women 20. There is additional activity on women track, it's called Empower. So there are two groups exclusively devoting on women issues. There are several other focusing on youth, startup, science. So please feel free to connect with, particularly those who live in G20 countries. But there are opportunities for those who are not from G20 countries. There are several methods of connecting with the activities of these G20 engagement groups.
Hello. Hello, my name is Balarama Varanasi. I'm an American graduate and I'm currently in Hyderabad, but I'm supporting two American enterprises in their outreach, US Global Business Forum and Academy for Global Business Advancement. I am interested in seeing, I would like to congratulate for Youth Pravasi Bharat Divas. Likewise, I would like to see professional Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Like in NRIs, we have Ata, Nata, all cultural language type association. I would like to see professionals based on all project management professionals of Indian origin across all nations being together. All engineers from all nations being together. This, what we can do is, like a corporate economy, like several American associations that manage fair competition in American homeland, they are not very active among Commonwealth nations. When we create these professional association, the same level can be created at G20 like that. I would like to, request your cooperation and how to go about. I'm interested in creating that.
This is the last question we are taking, so please answer. I'm sorry, dinner is ready, so this is the last question. I'm sorry.
An excellent idea how to involve professional groups with the G20. We take the idea and we'll discuss with some of the engagement groups where professional bodies are involved.
So thank you so much. Thank you all the dignitaries on the dais, respected Mr. Shringla ji and all our guests. Thank you so much for being with us and answers all the queries. Thank you so much. The dinner is awaiting you, waiting for all of you. So please join us for the dinner. Thank you. मुक्तेश जी, अभय जी एंड श्रृंगला जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आज के इस सेशन में पधारने के लिए और अपना G20 के बारे में जितनी भी क्वेरीज थी उसको सॉल्व करने के लिए। तो कल हम ज़रूर से फिर से मिलने जा रहे हैं। ऑनरेबल एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर धर्मेंद्र प्रधान जी, ऑनरेबल फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर निर्मला सीतारमन जी होंगी और फिर वैलिडिटी फंक्शन में माननीय राष्ट्रपति महोदया होंगी। तो प्लीज़ भोजन पर पधारिए। थैंक यू सो मच ऑल द डिग्निटरीज फॉर जॉइनिंग अस, ग्रेसिंग दिस ओकेजन। नमस्कार, गुड नाइट, शब खैर, कल फिर मिलेंगे। जय हिंद।